Welcome back to another episode of Business Journey Unlocked. I'm joined today by Derek Tolley, owner of Safe Haven Avian Group and Wildlife Removal. Derek works closely with facility managers, operation directors, and compliance officers at both Fortune 500 companies, retail stores, food processing plants, airports, government buildings who are navigating one of the most overlooked compliance and safety risks: birds and wildlife trapped inside operational facilities. Derek, welcome to the show. I'm going to shoot it over to you to explain what you're all about.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. So in 2013, I started a company doing wildlife removal. Started out in the residential arena. I came from corporate business, so I always wanted to see how big I could grow a company and try to see how much impact I can make on the commercial side because wildlife removal is considered a gypsy industry for 75 years. Birds inside a facility has been an issue for 75 years. So if you think about it, grocery stores and supermarkets weren't around in the 60s and 70s. So they're still relatively, if you consider the age of, America, it's still a new industry if you look at the timeline. So birds have been an issue for years, and I just identified a opportunity to work with pest control companies to fill a void and to perfect humanely removing birds from inside facilities, because that's really been the issue with pest control companies. They have been trying to sell an integrative pest management program for 100 years to commercial facilities. But the one thing it didn't include was humanely removing birds. People could not figure it out. So I got a hold of the AG utilizing mist nets for the exterior of the facility. And I said to myself, after being at a Walmart and having a conversation at a Walmart with birds in it, I would like an opportunity to see if I can't humanely remove the birds from your facility at no charge. So I had some nets shipped over from China. We engineered bird capturing systems to be able to deploy inside the facility. That involves a pole and a hook, carabiners, and a pulley system to pull these big nets up with different sizes and deploy them inside the facility. And then we'd raise them up to the roof line, where we can then continue using flushing techniques, bird call techniques, to flush that bird into that location that we wanted it to be in, where our nets are located, to have the best, highest opportunity of catching the bird and removing that bird within 3 hours.
Is 3 hours the average time that you've seen extraction?
Great question. So in order for us to be able to sell this service, we had to create a case study. So in 2015, 2016, we took over 100 commercial facilities that were some of our clients. And what we did was deploy our netting systems in different configurations inside the facility. And what we learned after 100, doing a case study of 100 work orders, we narrowed down a methodology and a process to where we need to deploy the nets inside the facility that's going to give us the highest percentage of removing that bird within 3 hours. So after you take, from the first net going up to being deployed to the last net being disassembled, it was an average time over 3.1 hours over 100 work orders for facilities anywhere from 15,000 square feet to 2 million square feet. And that includes big Amazon facilities.
Wow, it's always amazing interacting with people that truly saw an opportunity. While what traditional pest removal were doing before you started this company, it wasn't the best approach. You saw what their flaws were, what mistakes they were doing, and you actually took it upon yourself to get that opportunity under your belt and actually excel within your company. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your company is the largest nationwide with wildlife removal, correct?
Correct.
It's just stuff like that, just always beautiful to have a vision, have a dream, and turn into execution. There's a lot of people that are afraid of the go-to-market strategy when they first start businesses. They want everything to be perfect. They want it to not have any mistakes, but mistakes are going to come. Mistakes are bound to happen. I mean, when you first started this extraction, I'm sure that you had a couple situations where it could have gone a lot better, a lot smoother. But out of those 100, case studies that you're doing, you really honed in your craft. It's just
Right.
about like A/B testing.
Right. And we say our industry is very much like an airline pilot. So you need about, what, 10,000 hours on site to be considered an expert. We kind of deploy that same mentality when we're hiring people. It's not going to be easy in the beginning, but the more you do it, the easier it's going to get until you hit that 10,000 hours. And then all of a sudden you realize, okay, I'm an expert at this. I can remove a bird in any facility at any time. So it kind of worked. It kind of played out.
Yes, and also just comes down to business as well. That can be correlated to business. When you first start any business, you're uncomfortable. You never see, even though you're in the corporate world,
Yep.
the corporate world doesn't teach you how to run a business. They're two completely different animals. So what was that transition like going from the corporate world to actually owning your own business?
Well, one thing I wanted to back up to, you mentioned recognizing, and I agree. I was always kind of ADD, so I'm always kind of thinking differently, and I look at things from kind of a sideways angle. And when I realized, these pest control companies like Orkin, Terminex, Rentokil, when they're trying to remove a bird, they're using different methodology that is not it's not cohesive for the client. They don't like it because in pest control in the commercial industry, they have money only going out. They don't bring any money coming in. So if you can help them mitigate, risk assessment, a more safer technique, not using glue boards, poison, not using air rifles, that's what I wanted to do. I saw that opportunity and I recognized it. And then I put together a game plan on my whiteboards on how we're going to go about building this, implementing this, and like you say, deploying it out to, to clients. So I think if anybody's going to start a business, they really have to have an understanding of not just, the opportunity, but themselves. If they're actually willing to go through the pain points and the investments, because what I've learned, and I talk about this with my leadership team, we got here by doing the right things for the right reasons, but there could be an incident where one decision could have changed the whole outcome of the company. So it's very important to really understand yourself and be aware of yourself, what your capabilities are and what you're willing to do to earn it.
I do agree, and that's just a clear example of the beauty of life. You may not know where it's going to go within the next couple of years, but if you keep on being tried and true, not only within yourself, but also with the business as well, it's going to come. The biggest thing I like to say is if you really enjoy what you do, money's the byproduct. Money will come
Right.
eventually.
Absolutely.
People are just so honed in on all the wins within their business or correlated and attached to a monetary value. That's not how a business should be run because then you're going to look at all your margins, all your sales, and you're going to be like, why is this not working? What am I doing wrong? But if you detach yourself and understand, okay, great, I was able to help this Walmart location, this Amazon facility location, like I was able to make an impact on these people because all these birds, bats, whatever you're taking out, they have diseases too that can harm, the people, the workers within the facility, that can also harm their family as well, especially if they have kids, pets.
Right.
It's all a domino effect. Once you're able to pinpoint and extract the one position where that can harm not anything at all, which is the animals, and also safely, humanely get them out of there, that's the biggest thing.
Right.
Especially in your line of work, shortcuts are very tempting. You mentioned about the glue traps, the air rifles, all these different executions to actually harm the animal. Based on yourself, based on what Safe Haven is about, what's the one principle that you refuse to compromise on when trying to properly and humanely execute your services in the extraction?
Wow, I could go a lot of different ways with that. I'll tell you this, and let me know if I'm answering your question. But when I was starting this company, I used to have a whole list of company morals and values. To the point to where me and my leadership team looked at that list to really have an identity of how we're going to run a company and how we're going to build it. We looked at that list and we realized we narrowed it down to two things. And this is what a lot of people don't understand because it's so hard to be ethical and moral. But what we learned was if you do the right thing for the right reasons and just make good decisions and be a good person, you're going to go a long way and not shortcut things. And so that's kind of how we operate. We treat people like people within our company. We treat people like people in the commercial, our clients. And you just got to be honest and ethical and don't lie and don't play your customers and make sure you stay on the right track and do the right things for the right reasons. I don't know if I answered your question.
There's a lot of people that fail to recognize people connect with people, people buy from people, especially in the beginning. They understand that principle, but once you get bigger within your company, there's a lot of gray areas in that, and then they all just carry on, looking at a client as a number. But this client has a different journey, a different experience, a different lifestyle, different mindset, perspective in life. It's getting a little deeper, but it's just everyone should be treated with the utmost respect. You should treat them as like a friend, not as somebody that's just going to pay your bills. Because if you only think about that, going on what I was saying earlier about attaching and detaching, you're only attaching on the monetary outcome. You're not really attaching yourself to the customer relationship, the rapport building, because that's what really exemplifies a business where to go from surviving to thriving.
Right. And I don't think a lot of people, I think a lot of people, when they're starting a business and they get a couple hits and they start seeing the money coming in, they kind of get sidetracked with the little successes and don't think about the colossal success and the goal that they're wanting to achieve. So it can be difficult when you have small successes in your company from an ego perspective, from a financial perspective. But if you stay focused and stay on what the colossal goal is, that's where you're going to succeed. And don't be afraid to fail. A lot of people are afraid to fail. I noticed that. And I notice people that have companies are afraid to take risk inside their companies. I wanted to be a national company. I wanted to lead in this industry, and I had to build it from the ground up. But I was very honest with my goals. I want to be the largest, the biggest in the country, if not in the world. And we're going that way.
We are in an epidemic where people are afraid to take those risks. There's so much opportunity on all different platforms. The knowledge we have nowadays it's phenomenal. It's endless. But there's so many people that are scared to take that initial step, that are scared to take that risk. Especially people in their 20s and 30s when they can still take that risk. I've seen people start businesses in their 50s and 60s. It just depends on the mindset. I was talking to a individual the other day who owns 6 companies, and he was telling me that he talks to people all the time as a mentor, as a consultant. And time again, so many people ask him how he started, what was the difference, and when they actually point it towards them, they talk themselves out of it because they're scared, they're comfortable. The only way we can excel in life, both professionally and personally, is to get in those uncomfortable positions, because those uncomfortable scenarios are what makes or breaks us. It really allows us to mold into the person that we want to be.
Absolutely.
Given your example, you wanted to be the name brand, you want to be national. You had to take some risks. You had to make some mistakes along the way in order to get where you are today. If you didn't take those risks, if you didn't have that mindset, then you'd still be where you are, just a lot less. Maybe not as name brand.
I tell people, be careful what you wish for and really think about what you want. Do you want to be a local company? Do you want to be a regional, or do you want to be a national? So those are 3 separate processes of getting to those 3 things. Yeah, it's scary. And sometimes you got to spend money to make money, and you got to see money go. And, and everybody's going to make bad decisions, right, Kevin? Like in the beginning, nobody knows how to do it. There's no manual for doing it. So you're going to make bad decisions. But as long as you're ethical and moral and your heart's in a good place, you can always go back and fix those decisions.
I agree. Even having the best mentors and coaches, you're still bound to make mistakes.
Right.
These people, they're not there so you can be perfect from the get-go. They're there to excel your journey based on their previous experiences, based on their previous outcomes within the business and professional ventures.
Yeah,
There's so many people.
I had a mentor too, who's a friend of mine who I work with. He's like a friendly competitor. We kind of look after each other, and he constantly says to me, "Make yourself uncomfortable until it's no longer uncomfortable."
Hmm.
And I'm like, that's such a great statement. Like I kind of do that anyway because I'm ADD and I'm all over the place. You could probably tell, but I put myself in a lot of uncomfortable business situations because maybe it turns out better than you thought it would turn out.
One more thing I would like to add on the mentor side is depending on how many mentors you have, you only had the one, but if you have multiple mentors, a lot of people take what they say to the extreme. And what I mean by that, everyone has different journeys, different backgrounds, different life experiences. So these mentors, these coaches are there to help you out, but you should take them with a grain of salt. And what I mean by that is you want to mold what they said, but mold it into yourself. They're not the ones running your business. They're not the ones in the back end. They're just helping you out. Essentially, you're the CEO of your company. You're the owner of your company. So you have to think as a CEO would, not as, let's say, Mentor Joe, because Mentor Drawer can help you out, but it's actually you yourself and your morals and your ethics that actually will run and make the business prosperous.
Yeah, and I tell everybody at the end of the day, it's all on you.
Hmm.
So if you're getting a corporate phone call from Target, let's say, they're calling your phone, and you gotta have your company tight.
I agree. Just going on the ICP, sitting where you are working across multiple different industries, as I mentioned, food processing plants, airports, government facilities, even the Fortune 500 companies, Walmart, Amazon, Target. What's one shift that you think facility managers are underestimating right now when it comes to wildlife risk or compliance? And what do you think would be their first uncomfortable move they should be making within the next 12 or 24 months?
It's a great question. I think a lot of our facilities, we try to kind of mentor them and offer recommendations on operational practices, structural issues in a facility, and sanitation issues, allowing birds to come inside their facility, which is a major risk. COVID-19 was a avian flu, and that's really where our company went from down here nationwide quickly. I think being able to not just sell them on the service, but being able to partner with them to help them identify, you know, issues that can help them mitigate the interior of birds, because there really is no product to keep them out. It's a
Hmm.
lot of structural, operational, and sanitation reasons are why birds are flying in. Plus, it's climate control. There's no predators. They want to be there. Next thing would be we are now having discussions with a client to once we capture the subject in hand. We are talking to a client right now to take a sampling of that bird, send it off to a lab, and create a matrix for them to identify diseases and other issues that bird may have had while being exposed to produce, exposed foods. So we're trying to help them kind of, and it's such a new industry. Our clients don't really know what they want. They have an understanding of what they want, but they don't know how it works. So we're having to work with them and create processes for them to help them mitigate risk overall in public safety.
Based on all the case studies you have within your company, do you find that the introduction of these birds and wildlife that come in different facilities, do you believe it's more of a structural thing, as you mentioned, with the climate, having no predators, or do you think it's just human error, as in, having the door propped open on a hot day, or having it just flying straight in? Like, what have you seen personally within your experiences?
Okay, so it's not just one thing. It's going to be what I've identified are three different collaborated factors with that question. One is you got to recognize you're dealing with a very intelligent species. So birds have photographic memory for life. So once they kind of imprint on our technicians, it becomes a real chess game at that point. So that's what you're dealing with in regards to birds. They're like curious cats. When they see humans walking in and out of a door, they're actually curious. They want to see what's in there. Another thing is they're very oxygen and heat and air condition coordinated. So they follow during the winter times, they can feel the heat coming out of the door, and that's where they decide they want to fly in because it's a better climate. Same with the summertime and the air condition. But you got to correlate that too. If you have structural issues like doors are open or broken or the vinyl curtains are broken, that client needs to understand they may have to help, to mitigate the issue by getting your operations under control, getting them in line, creating policies for the employees. For example, shut the dock doors, make sure your automatic door sensors are tweaked, to open and close in 5 seconds. Not only that, they got to fix their structure. They got to, make sure there's no water puddles, water sources, food sources for the bird. So it's a collaborative effort. It's not just one thing. Does that make sense?
It's very interesting because when I was thinking about it, I wasn't thinking of all those different areas, but coming from you, seeing the different perspectives and the different types of situations, it really goes to show that this type of work that you do isn't just a cookie cutter thing. You really have to understand the business. You got to really understand the facility, understand the human intervention with certain stuff in order to actually analyze that and put an execution and game plan into place.
Yeah, you mentioned risk assessment. That comes with a program. You can't just say we have risk and nothing, to implement to fix it. So we're that part that helps them put together a program and implement it, and then we offer it to our clients. And that's why we never say no, because our clients kept asking for more and more. Not only is a bird being removed, but can you help out with wildlife? Can you help out with sanitation cleanup? Can you help out with construction to mitigate the facility from birds and wildlife? We always said yes. We didn't know what the hell we were doing, but we figured it out. And now we're the #1 exclusion company in the country.
And that's what separates you with other local industries. Even though you didn't know what you were doing, you still said yes. That's a great problem to have when clients keep coming back asking for more.
Well, it's like, yes, we'll do it. What are your expectations? What are your thresholds? What do you want? And then a customer will just lay it out for you. I got really smart people. They know how to ask the right questions to get the client to give us what the need behind the need is. So I had a conversation with a client the other day, and I was realizing, they're telling me their needs, but it wasn't the need behind the need. Does that make sense? The need behind the need was the cost in their budget. So it can go a lot of different directions working with corporate clients.
I do agree, and I'm gonna just quickly isolate something you said real quick. It's just you should always have people under your team that are more intelligent to you. And what I mean by that, there's so many people, there's so many solo bands nowadays that try to do everything under the sun, and then they wonder why their business isn't excelling as much as it should be. Then they compare themselves to all these other people, but all these other people are delegating, they're hiring smarter people to run certain areas within their business, right? It's not just you. If you really detach yourself within those operations, and if those operations can run without you present, that's how you truly know that you started something mainstream, that you actually started something worthwhile. Because if a business can actually run without you present, that's how you know you have good team members. That's how you know you have a lean and mean team. It shows that you hired the right people. It's very hard finding the right staff. Countless interviews, countless applications, hiring this person didn't work out. It's just time and time again making those mistakes, understanding what makes somebody an A player within Safe Haven.
And I would also add to really understand what that means not to burn bridges. Because I give you an example, and I've learned to make my circle small. In the beginning, I was trying to please everybody, and it doesn't work like that. You need to make your circle small, and you need to pick 2 people that you can bring with you in your success, and you pay them right, and they also get the glory of succeeding. You bring them with you, they're going to help you grow your business. So the best thing I ever did was stop and had a conversation with myself that I can no longer take this company to a certain level if I don't hire the right people. So I actually hired my boss for the job before me. He fired me because I was building this company.
Yeah.
And I always never burnt a bridge with him because he had something that I wanted. He had the mindset, the intelligence, the height, the voice to be able to have these CEO meetings where everybody kind of looked at me as a kid. And I called him up one day and I'm like, let's build a sales team. Let's, come work for me. I'll pay you well. I'll bring you with me on the success ladder. And he did. And now he's my COO. And I also correlated the same process correlated to my CRO, who I hired shortly after that. And that's when I knew you can feel it when you're making the right decisions. You're an intuitive person. Everybody's intuitive. You know when you're making the wrong mistakes. You know when you're making the bad mistakes. You don't need to have a talk with yourself. You intuitively know. And that's when I knew, okay, I hired the two people that's smarter than me, that get it, that will listen to me, that will let me kind of throw everything on my whiteboard and say, this is where I'm trying to go. Help me get there. And it makes them more involved in the company. I always said, I don't want to run this company as I'm sitting at the top giving commands. I want a round table where everybody has a stake and everybody has a voice.
That's beautiful. It really differentiates between businesses that are surviving and thriving. It just really goes to show that you really wanted this to work out. I don't know a lot of people that would hire their own ex-boss, let alone the boss that fired them, right? That takes a lot of guts and determination and mindset, not only within yourself, but also with the business as well. I mean, you hear time and time again, business isn't personal. Right, you wanted the business to excel to a point where you saw it in your mind and on the whiteboard, but how would you actually take those thoughts into execution, into actions? And you needed somebody that has the experience, which was your ex-boss. I find that amazing. It really goes to show the grit and determination that you truly had when starting your business. And going on what you mentioned earlier about filtering your circle small. The same thing could be applied to your services as well. Given your business as well, it is a little niche specific, but anyone listening to this that are or more into a broad category, similar with myself, with AI and automation, there's so many people that think that they can serve everybody.
Right.
While that's true in a way, you're going to be stretching yourself out thin. In the beginning, it is, if you don't have a baseline, it's better to kind of dip your toes in a couple of different pools until you find one that you can fall flat into. But in the beginning, it depends on what you're trying to go for. Like if you don't have any experience in any of these fields that you're trying to hit, then yeah, go expand, see what works for you, see what doesn't work for you. But if you do that for a certain period of time, you're just going to stretch yourself out too thin to a point where it's just going to burn bridges and burn fumes. And as I mentioned earlier, you're going to question yourself time and time again, why didn't this work? It's just because you weren't specific enough. When people actually hone in on their circle or their services as well, it really goes from here to all the way up here.
Right. Yep, I agree with you 100%. I mean, the people you pick are going to determine your success and how you evolve.
I've had a lot of different CEOs, founders, owners come onto the show, and in a business perspective, a couple of challenges boil down to a couple key areas in terms of slowing down growth. That could be with sales, with lead gen, fulfillment and delivery. Coming from a business perspective, what's one area within Safe Haven that you're trying to fix within 2026, whether that's on the sourcing side, the execution side, or scaling operations across multiple facilities?
That's a very good question. I'll start with last October. Like I say, you got to be very aware you got to recognize and be very aware. And so when you have money coming in and cash flow going out, you want to make good financial decisions. So for us personally as a company, we are getting our financial house in order. And one of the things I had to do, even for us to get started to really identifying internally the overall health of the company, was don't be afraid to audit yourself. Don't be afraid to audit the company with other experts, because that is their field. That's what they're good at, and they're going to help you identify and bring all the deficiencies to the surface. Then you can make good decisions financially. So we just got through with our audit, and it was a good audit for us. It turned out really well. But one of the things that we did uncover, was cash flow, getting your clients, your billion-dollar clients, to actually pay you for services rendered. Because this is a new industry, we caught everybody off guard. So a lot of people didn't know how to categorize us to even pay us, and then they have all these different systems. What's it called? The direct deposit, HA?
ACH.
ACH. Yeah, you got to go through a lot of different portals. Every client's got a different portal that we had to sign up for. But really understanding the payment process and communicating with your clients about the payment process in order to get paid is something everybody should be aware of and get ahead of that. I don't know if I answered your question though either.
It's interesting because you mentioned it. You said that the companies didn't know how to categorize yourself, so they didn't know how to pay you.
Right.
Right? It's with any business, especially when you're first starting out, you should audit your business every couple months, maybe every quarter, right? While you get further and further down the line, when you hone in your practices and your frameworks,
Yep.
then you can maybe do it annually, right? But once you're starting something new, like with your company and your services, a new venture that's a little less mainstream, it is a little difficult for these companies to kind of mold and modify their own internal processes.
Yeah.
Correct. In order for them to, pay you, that's the biggest thing. And when you're facing decisions where both paths have real risk, whether it's as we're going on before about hiring a new specialist, you mentioned that in order to get to a specialist term, they need at least 100,000 or 10,000 hours, or whether that's deciding on taking a client in a sector you maybe have never served. I'm not too sure if there is a facility or organization that you haven't touched on yet. Based on this conversation, it seems like you touched, every one so far. But hypothetically speaking, if you had a client where you were touching in something new, a new facility, a new location, or maybe hiring somebody new, what framework or instinct that do you rely on when the data isn't necessarily there in order to get the answer you want?
In regards to hiring employees, or can you be
In
more?
regards to hiring a new specialist or deciding on taking a new client?
Well, I don't hire anymore. I used to. I have a team that does that now, and after hiring enough people, you start to put together a hiring program, and what that looks like is, there's criterias within that program that you want to find people that kind of fit that mold. So you can't hire someone that doesn't believe in your core company values. You can't work for a company that doesn't understand how you're trying to actually help them and not just take their money. So there can be some emotions involved in both processes, and both processes are different, whether or not I want to take on a new client or if I want to hire someone. They got, those are two different criterias that they got to fall in. But really, anybody can do this. We hire just good people. So that's our vetting process. Good people that make good decisions, that are financially responsible, because I don't want people blowing all of their money and then coming to me asking for more money. So, you got to make sure they're actual adults. You and I talked about this. There is a difference between perception and perspective. Some people may think they perceive themselves to be good stewards of finances and good stewards out in the world and just everyday good people, but the perspective is maybe they're not. So we've gotten really good hiring good people because it's just we've done it enough. We know.
I find that also differentiates yourself between other competitors because there's so many different industries, so many different companies that hire people based on their experience they had. If they have a degree, if they have a master's degree, you see so many entry-level jobs, especially in finance, where they're looking for a master's degree and 4 years of experience in just entry-level jobs. But you hire people based on themselves, if they're actually an adult, if they're actually a responsible human
Right.
being, someone who's actually that can connect with people that are down to life. Just having great people on your team, whether or not they have a high school diploma or a college degree, because nowadays society always wants you to have a college degree, right? Society teaches you how to work. It doesn't teach you how to run a business.
Right. And we did something different. So with my business model, one of the things I am most proud of in my company that I've built, and it kind of evolved this way. We didn't realize it was evolving this way. It just kind of organically, because we're making good decisions, things start kind of happening on its own and guiding you and directing you down the path you actually need to be going down. So I always say you really have to listen to everything that's going on, within your company. But yeah, damn it, I forgot what I was about to say. I was going down a rabbit hole and I forgot.
No, that's
I'm back.
beautiful. That's beautiful because it really goes to show that with different types of models produces different types of outcome, and the model that you have within your business has allowed you to excel nationwide. The
Right.
different risks, the different models, the different mindsets, the perspectives, the team members you have, it all goes down to who you are internally, because the way your business is run is based on the person who you are.
Right. And our KPIs for our technicians out in the field is not only are you a good person and you're making good decisions and you're doing the right things for the right reasons, but can you catch a bird? And, if you got a bird in hand, that's your KPI. And what I was about to say was going down that rabbit hole. I truly feel like, and I care enough about this company, I can say this. We did DEI in a progressive company the right way. So we don't care if you're a woman, if you're a man, if you're religious, if you're not religious, we don't care. We care if you're a good person. We keep politics and everything out of our company. So you got a very easy path, to working with us because our standards are those criterias of a good employee. But can you catch a bird? Because if you can, you're going to get paid as the guy next to you or as the female next to you. So I got a girl in the Northwest Pacific who was on food stamps about 9 years ago, was homeless, had 4 kids, living out of her car. And my CRO found her one time and had a conversation with her, and he's like, she can communicate really well. And then we found out she's really a good person. And then we found out, oh shit, she can catch a bird. And now she's, she went from homeless to on food stamps to buying her and building her first house last year for her and her family. She just got married. She has another baby on the way. She's thriving. We want to help our people thrive. So we did things a little bit backwards. We pay people a lot up front and give you a lot of expectations. We require a lot from you. You're going to get paid a hell of a lot. I don't think we have one technician that made less than $100,000 last year, and that's saying something. And it's worked out because if you get them not to worry financially, then they can focus 100% on helping you build a company. So that was my thought process in the beginning. Pay them a lot, put a lot of expectations on them, run them thin, make sure they're going to be stressed, but they're going to make a lot of money doing it. One thing they won't have to worry about is money.
And it really would weed out the individuals that may not be up for the job. Even though you're hiring them, if they don't have the expectations, if they're able to catch a certain number of birds based on your KPI for, whether you do it weekly, monthly, quarterly, they're there for a reason. You're paying them upfront good money in order for them to actually think how they can benefit and provide value with not only themselves, with their family, but also within Safe Haven, your organization.
Kevin, what I've learned doing it this way, they actually care about the company. Like, they really do intuitively care because I care about them. I want to see their successes. I want their stories, to be successful. It's really cool being able to build a company where you're taking care of a lot of people and they all have their own stories. Everybody looks at, the world through their own eyeball. Right? So not everybody is going to look at things the way I look at it. So I don't need them to agree with me on everything. I don't need them, to try to conform to be me. I want them to be them. and not have to worry about money in the meantime and just care about the company.
There's a lot of companies, especially in the security sector, that will want people to morph within their company's identity.
Right.
While in that sector, it's, it has its pros and cons, but going on the niche that you're in, you really don't need that identity. They just need to be themselves. They need to connect with people, be down to earth with people, and then catch the bird.
Well,
That's the
I
end
also
game.
say you got to be able to communicate appropriately with everyone across the board, from employees getting in the way or customers asking questions, or helping the store manager. You got to be able to communicate appropriately too. So, we want to make sure they're not worried about money and they're not stressed out, so they can do their job better.
I find the way you did your business model, the way that you hire people is a little backwards, as you mentioned, but it has allowed you to excel the company into a position where if you were to follow the mainstream ideology, it wouldn't have been able to get where it is today. And I find that it just comes down to who you were and how you actually wanted to solve these problems, how you wanted to solve the business model in order for it to excel to a point where you don't even run anything anymore, the day-to-day or the hiring process. Like you're there to make the business better, run smoother, while having all these different roundtable individuals having a collaborative experience and thought process and decision making. Because that really goes to show that even though you're up here, you have people that are around at or around the same level as you that can have their own experience, their own thought process to actually put the company where it should be, not where you want it to be.
See, I didn't always. Again, like you, I did go. I kind of go sideways. I didn't. Who's to say that the corporations that run America are actually doing it the right way? Who put that title on? I necessarily didn't do things the right way, but I did things a more productive way. And there's a lot of other outside resources and tools. I've had to stop and say to myself, okay, is there other people that can come in and help us? Like even like factoring invoices, or even like, factoring CFO or factoring taxes or whatever. There's a lot of different avenues you can go down. So you got to also identify what resources are out in the market that's going to help you be more efficient, more productive.
I do agree. Within society, there really is no right or wrong way. It just
Right.
depends on exactly how you're going to run your business. The way you run your business has allowed you to be successful. The way I run my business is allowed me to be successful, right? It
Right.
depends on the different ideology, thought process. What's the end goal? That's the biggest question that you have to ask yourself constantly. What's the end goal I want within myself, within my company? Because starting your own business, it is very heartbreaking, and it's especially starting out from nothing, from scratch, like you, for example. It really goes to show along the experience who you truly are as a person.
Right. And I think too, if you don't have the upfront of your idea and your company morals and values up front, and you're not thinking colossally, and you don't understand that process, that methodology to how to think colossally,
Hmm.
I think if you missing are those 2 points, you're not going to have a successful company. You're
Hmm.
already behind the 8 ball. I always say we got to try to stay ahead of it. I don't want to get behind it, and I don't want to decline. So I'm always thinking more colossally. The more we grow and the older we get.
That's beautiful. Before we wrap up here, if you can go back and give yourself one piece of advice when you were just starting out Safe Haven, knowing what you know now about building America's largest wildlife removal company, what would it be?
Don't be afraid to fail, and make your circle small and bring them with you.
That's beautiful. Short and sweet. Again, as we mentioned, there's so many people that are afraid to fall flat on their face, but if you fall flat on your face 10 times and on that 11th time you're able to be prosperous, that's all that matters. But there's so many people that fall flat on their third or fourth time and then they just quit.
Right.
you know the way that society is nowadays, again, they don't want people, they don't show you how to run businesses, they show you how to be a worker.
Right.
So just take that risk, take that risk for 2 years, and if it doesn't work out, the amount of connections that you've gained along the way, building up your network, it can get you a lot of better jobs as opposed to just running where you are right now, not having a business. You know, there's so many people that are afraid to take that initial step. But once
You,
you're actually able to, then it's very prosperous.
you know, when I was starting this, I was bright-eyed and grit and grinding, and yeah, I had big visions and everything, but I didn't know who I really was in the beginning, like I know myself now. And so being able to recognize, you know, yourself with all those different phases of success and failures and getting back up and losing money and making money, like it changes you as a person. So you want to really be grounded with yourself, know who thyself is. Yeah, it's going to help you be more authentic and help you have better conversations. Like me and you are just fluidly having a natural conversation. You know, in the beginning, it's hard. You're nervous, you know, you're beaten, you failed, scraped up, but, you know, you'll come out of it if you stick with it. You always hear, stay the course. You know, keep staying the course. You know, don't give up. It's the ones who give up that truly have failed. But if you've failed and you continue to stay the course, you're winning.
I agree. I mean, if you look at prominent figures, you know, Alex Hormozy, Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, you know,
Yeah.
they had to make those mistakes. They had to make a lot of uncomfortable situations in order for them to excel their business into millions of dollars of revenue,
Right.
right? It just goes to show who are you trying to be within yourself? Who are you trying to be within society? Who are you trying to be within your business? If you can't answer those questions, then what are you
That's a
doing with your
problem.
life?
Right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, you got it figured out, Kevin. You want to need a job?
Not right now. I mean,
No,
I'm
you get it. You're smart. I love having these dialogues. Yeah, it's fun.
I appreciate that. For anyone who's listening or watching this, Derek, what's the best place for them to reach out either to you or to Safe Haven?
You can go to our website, safehavenaviangroup.com, or email sales.safehaven@gmail.com.
All right, beautiful, Derek. Well, again, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. This was a very exciting conversation.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
My pleasure.